58, Nicole Kidman has finally admitted the truth behind her divorce from Keith Urban, and it's not what fans ever expected. For nearly 2 decades, they were Hollywood's golden couple, the red carpets, the public devotion, the family built on loyalty and love. To the world, theirs was the rare fairy tale that had beaten the odds. But behind the scenes, the cracks were deeper than anyone realized, and Nicole's words now reveal a painful truth, one that changes how we see their marriage forever. This isn't just another celebrity breakup, it's a story of sacrifice, resilience, and the moment Nicole decided that even love wasn't enough to hold everything together. According to People, one of the clearest turning points came when Keith Urban moved into his own residence, a choice that symbolized distance far greater than miles. Before we dive into this emotional journey, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss the biggest Hollywood stories. Now let's uncover why Nicole finally walked away. The Hollywood fairy tale beginning. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's story began like something out of a romance movie, but it wasn't scripted, it was real life. In January 2005, fate brought them together at the G-Day USA Gala in Los Angeles, a celebration of Australian talent abroad. Nicole, already an Academy Award-winning actress with an international reputation, crossed paths with Keith, who at the time was carving his way into country music's top ranks. That night, they were introduced, and Nicole later admitted she felt an instant spark. Yet, surprisingly, Keith didn't call her for months. Nicole confessed she wondered if he wasn't interested, even though she'd already developed a quiet crush. Then came the moment that changed everything. On her birthday in 2005, Nicole opened her New York apartment door at 5 in the morning to find Keith standing there holding a bouquet of gardenias. The gesture was simple but powerful, an unexpected sign of sincerity. Nicole said that from that moment she was a goner. The romance took off quickly, and within a year, Keith proposed. On June 25, 2006, the two were married in a candlelit ceremony in Sydney, blending Hollywood glamour with Australian roots. Photos of the day showed a couple glowing with love, and many believed they had discovered the kind of forever bond so few in Hollywood ever find. But behind the glow of their wedding and early days together, life was already preparing challenges that would test the strength of their vows. Only a few months after saying "I do," Keith entered rehab to battle long-standing struggles with addiction. Nicole chose to stand firmly by his side, proving her loyalty early on. What looked like a fairy tale beginning was already revealing its cracks, a foreshadowing of battles still to come. Building family and career, marriage for Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban wasn't just about romance, it was about creating a home filled with love, family, and stability. When they tied the knot in 2006, Nicole was already a mother to Isabella and Connor, her adopted children with Tom Cruise. Adding Keith into her life meant not just a husband, but the chance to expand the family she had always dreamed of nurturing. 2 years later, in 2010, their second daughter, Faith Margaret, was born. With 4 children between them, their household was lively, complicated, and full of responsibility. Nicole often described motherhood as her anchor, the one role that kept her grounded even as she navigated the chaos of Hollywood. Keith echoed those feelings in interviews and through his music, which frequently carried subtle tributes to Nicole and their daughters. Fans could feel that behind the fame there was genuine devotion, but while their home life blossomed, both of their careers were also exploding. Nicole stepped into some of her most challenging and rewarding roles yet, from Rabbit Hole, which earned her another Academy Award nomination, to Big Little Lies, which secured Emmy and Golden Globe wins. Nicole proved she was more than just a movie star. She was a powerhouse in both film and television. Keith, meanwhile, dominated country music with chart-topping albums, sold-out tours, and multiple Grammy and CMA awards. He also became a familiar face on television as a judge on American Idol, charming millions with his warmth and honesty. Yet the very success that defined them also came with a price. Nicole's filming often required months abroad, while Keith's tours had him constantly on the road. They tried to make family time sacred, arranging video calls and flying across the world for short reunions. But the physical distance was a shadow that never quite disappeared. And in Hollywood, even shadows eventually become impossible to ignore. The shadow of separation. To the public eye, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban seemed unshakable. Their red carpet appearances radiated love, with whispered exchanges caught by cameras and affectionate glances that became tabloid highlights. Nicole often praised Keith in interviews, calling him her deep, deep love, while Keith returned the devotion through heartfelt speeches and lyrics dedicated to her. For years, they appeared to embody an enviable Hollywood romance, one that was equal parts glamorous and grounded. But behind the polished surface, cracks were beginning to widen. The demands of 2 global careers made togetherness difficult. Nicole's projects often took her overseas for long stretches, while Keith's tours spanned continents. At first, the couple brushed it off, insisting they always made time for family. But time apart gradually began to outweigh time together. The changes didn't go unnoticed. Fans who had grown accustomed to their open affection started spotting subtle differences. Social media posts celebrating anniversaries, once filled with long and emotional tributes, became shorter and less frequent. Eventually, they disappeared altogether. During one live radio interview, Keith abruptly ended the conversation after a question about Nicole, leaving listeners unsettled and sparking speculation that something was wrong. Even on stage, where Keith had often intertwined his music with their love story, hints of distance began to show. Meanwhile, Nicole, who had always fiercely supported her husband through his struggles, appeared quieter, more guarded. For a couple that had been so willing to share their bond with the world, the growing silence spoke volumes. The public still saw flashes of the perfect couple at award shows, but privately, the emotional distance was becoming impossible to hide. Nicole was left questioning whether the marriage that had survived addiction, fame, and separation could survive a deeper, more painful fracture, the absence of connection itself. Breaking point. Updated. By the summer of 2025, the whispers of distance between Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban became a reality too heavy to ignore. Reports confirmed that Keith had quietly moved into his own residence, leaving Nicole and their daughters in the family home. To outsiders, it might have looked like another period of career-driven separation, Keith on tour, Nicole on set, but those closest to them knew it was something more deliberate. This wasn't just time apart, it was a step away from the marriage itself. Nicole, still deeply committed to salvaging what they had built, leaned harder into family. She reached for the intimacy and stability that had defined their happiest years. Friends close to her later described how she believed the bond they had once relied on could weather yet another storm, but instead of reciprocity, her efforts were met with distance. Keith, according to media coverage, was already shaping a new reality, one that didn't revolve around the marriage. The symbolism of his move was devastating. For Nicole, it wasn't simply about living separately, it was about what that choice represented. Nearly 20 years of shared history, sacrifices, and triumphs were no longer enough to hold them together. She began to realize that love, as powerful as it had been, could not heal a partnership when trust and unity had already eroded. The final blow came on September 30, 2025, when Nicole filed for divorce after 19 years of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences. As Reuters reported, the split had truly begun in early summer, when Keith moved out of the family home, marking the start of the end.
What's next for Nicole? For Nicole Kidman, the divorce papers were not the end of her story. They were the beginning of a new chapter. At 58, she finds herself at a crossroads, but also in a place of strength. Family remains her anchor, and those closest to her say she has leaned heavily on her sister Antonia, who has long been her confidante during turbulent times. More than anything, Nicole is focused on her daughters, Sunday and Faith. Her priority now is ensuring they feel stability and love, even as the structure of their family shifts. Professionally, Nicole's future may prove just as fascinating. With decades of accolades already behind her, she has little left to prove. Instead, sources suggest she may now choose projects that feel personal, roles that speak to resilience, transformation, and authenticity. Much like Big Little Lies drew on her ability to portray layered, vulnerable characters, her next choices could reflect the truths she has recently shared about her own life. For fans, that means even deeper, more resonant performances. There's also speculation about whether Nicole will eventually speak more openly about her marriage in an interview. If she does, it's likely to carry more weight than gossip. Nicole has long been admired for her grace and candor, and hearing her reflections in her own words could further redefine her public image, not as a star shrouded in perfection, but as a woman who chose truth. Beyond career and family, this phase of her life may also bring unexpected freedom. Divorce, especially later in life, often leads to reinvention. For Nicole, that could mean new boundaries, deeper personal connections, or even fresh creative directions. Whatever path she takes, one thing is clear: she is determined not to be defined by loss, but by the courage to move forward on her own terms. Keith's uncertain path. While Nicole Kidman has stepped into this new chapter with openness and reflection, Keith Urban's path forward looks far less defined. Known for pouring his emotions into his music rather than his interviews, Keith has remained mostly silent about the divorce. That silence has left fans speculating about how he is processing the end of a marriage that once defined so much of his public and private life.
Professionally, Keith continues to thrive. His tours draw huge crowds, his albums remain chart toppers, and his reputation as one of country music's most enduring stars is secure. Yet some fans have noticed subtle shifts in his performances. Songs that once carried playful tributes to Nicole now feel heavier, more introspective. Whether intentional or not, audiences can sense the weight of change in his life. Personally, Keith faces challenges of adjustment, with custody arrangements allowing him far fewer days with his daughters. His role as a father will require careful coordination. For a man who has often credited family with grounding him, this reduced time could feel like a loss. Observers wonder how he will adapt, balancing the demands of an international career with the desire to stay present for Sunday and faith. Another lingering question surrounds his sobriety journey. Keith has been candid in the past about his struggles with addiction and the role Nicole played in supporting him through it. Without her by his side, fans are left to wonder how he will continue to navigate that path. Though there is no evidence to suggest setbacks, the concern highlights how intertwined his personal and professional lives have always been. For now, Keith's future remains quieter than Nicole's. While she redefines herself with honesty, he seems to be processing in silence. And in that contrast, the world sees two very different ways of facing the same ending. One through words, the other through music. The final word. Nicole Kidman's admission at 58 reminds us that even the most picture-perfect marriages can hide painful truths. For nearly 2 decades, she and Keith Urban seem to embody Hollywood's rare fairy tale, overcoming addiction, fame, and distance. Yet in the end, Nicole chose authenticity over appearances, admitting that respect and trust matter more than maintaining an image. Her story isn't just about heartbreak, it's about courage, resilience, and the freedom to speak her truth after years of silence. Keith, meanwhile, continues his journey more quietly, letting music carry the weight of emotions he hasn't voiced. Together, their paths now move separately, but their story leaves behind a powerful reminder: even love can't survive without honesty and connection. What do you think? Was their split inevitable, or could love have saved them? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss the latest Hollywood stories that reveal what really happens behind the spotlight. Keith and Nicole cross paths. By 2005, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman were two people carrying scars the world could not see. Keith, scarred from addiction and heartbreak, stood on stages in front of thousands but felt utterly alone. Nicole, hollowed by divorce and the estrangement from her children, masked her pain behind red carpet smiles. Both were survivors. Neither was whole. And then one January evening at a Hollywood gala, their paths finally crossed. There wasn't lightning or spectacle, just recognition. Nicole later said, "It wasn't fireworks, it was something quieter. I just saw him." Keith, intimidated by her grace, waited 4 months before he dared to call her. When he did, their bond grew away from headlines, nurtured in private conversations and quiet moments. Nicole didn't fall for the rock star image or the fame. She saw the wounded man behind it, and Keith, for the first time, allowed someone to truly see him. In June 2006, just a year after they met, they married in a candlelit church in Sydney. To the public, it was a fairy tale wedding. To Keith, it was salvation. "I truly began living when I married her," he later confessed. But their marriage was tested almost immediately. Just 4 months in, Keith relapsed, sliding back into the darkness of addiction. Nicole could have walked away. Many would have. But instead, she staged an intervention. She gathered friends, doctors, and her own unshakable resolve. Looking at Keith, she refused to abandon him. That night, he entered rehab, not just for himself, but for the woman who chose to fight for him rather than against him. It became the dividing line in their marriage, the moment that proved their vows were not just words, but a commitment to survive together. Keith's recovery brought clarity, and together, they began to build something neither had ever truly known before: a home rooted in resilience, honesty, and a love strong enough to face the darkest storms. Immediate challenges. The honeymoon period for Keith and Nicole was short-lived. Just 4 months after their beautiful Sydney wedding in 2006, Keith relapsed into the very darkness he had promised to leave behind. For Nicole, who had already endured heartbreak, miscarriages, and abandonment in her past, this moment could have been the breaking point. She had every reason to walk away. Instead, she chose to fight. Nicole organized an intervention, something few celebrity spouses would ever dare to do so publicly and so early into a marriage. She rallied friends, medical experts, and most importantly, her own unshakable willpower. It wasn't anger that pushed her, it was love. When she confronted Keith, she didn't condemn him. She looked at him with the same compassion she had carried for years, but this time with a firm boundary. Either he sought help, or their marriage would not survive. Keith later described that night as the line between destruction and redemption. Entering rehab wasn't easy, and recovery was far from overnight. Addiction never vanishes, it lingers like a shadow. But this time, Keith wasn't fighting alone. Nicole stood by him, quietly shielding him from the harsh glare of tabloids. While the world speculated, she chose silence, focusing instead on his healing. For Keith, Nicole's decision to stay became a defining moment. He had lost love before because of his demons. This time, he realized he was loved enough for someone to stay and fight with him rather than leave. That awareness changed everything. Their first year of marriage wasn't marked by luxury or fairy tale romance. It was marked by raw honesty, late-night conversations, and the slow rebuilding of trust. Keith threw himself into recovery with a determination that mirrored how he once threw himself into music. Nicole, for her part, discovered that love wasn't about perfection, it was about endurance. The early challenge nearly broke them, but instead it forged their marriage in fire. From then on, their relationship carried a different weight. They were no longer just Hollywood's golden couple. They were survivors, walking hand in hand through shadows most couples never speak of, and emerging stronger for it. Building a family. For Nicole Kidman, motherhood had always been a dream marked by heartbreak. Miscarriages in her marriage to Tom Cruise had left her grieving. Adoption gave her two beloved children, Isabella and Connor, but their estrangement after her divorce deepened her wounds. By the time she married Keith Urban, she feared the dream of raising children in a loving, stable home might never come true. In 2008, that dream became reality when Nicole gave birth to their first daughter, Sunday Rose. For her, holding that baby was nothing short of a miracle. She openly wept during those first months, not just from joy but from fear. She worried she might fail, confessing that she felt inadequate when she struggled with breastfeeding. But Keith was there to reassure her that love, not perfection, is what made her a mother. 2 years later, their family grew again through surrogacy with the birth of Faith Margaret in 2010. Nicole, who had once endured the pain of infertility, spoke words that resonated with millions of mothers. Whether a child is born to you, adopted, or carried by another, they are your children. You love them with your whole heart. Together, Keith and Nicole embraced a quieter life in Nashville, away from the chaos of Hollywood. Keith wrote songs at home, sometimes with Sunday and Faith playing nearby. Nicole balanced acting and producing with school runs and family dinners. Their home became a blend of ordinary joy and extraordinary resilience. For Keith, who once grew up in a house filled with fear and silence, fatherhood was redemption. He often said his greatest joy wasn't the Grammys or sold-out tours, it was making pancakes for his girls on Sunday mornings. For Nicole, who had once felt erased in marriage, this family gave her a place to exist fully as herself, wife, mother, and woman. The arrival of their daughters didn't erase their scars, but it filled their home with laughter where once there had been grief. Their family wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And for nearly 2 decades, it became the foundation they built everything else upon. Quick reminder, if you're finding this story eye-opening, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. It helps us bring you more untold Hollywood stories every week. Career highs and shared losses. As their family life took shape, both Keith and Nicole continued to dominate their careers. Keith's music career soared to new heights. By the mid-2000s, he was winning Grammys, filling stadiums, and pushing country music into uncharted territory with his unique blend of rock and twang. Songs like Days Go By and Making Memories of Us became anthems, earning him a reputation as one of the genre's most innovative voices. His fortune grew, reaching an estimated $75 million through tours, albums, and endorsements. Nicole, meanwhile, solidified her position as one of the greatest actresses of her generation. Her performances in Rabbit Hole and Big Little Lies revealed raw vulnerability and courage, earning her Emmys, Golden Globes, and renewed respect in Hollywood. She expanded into producing with Blossom Films, shaping projects that championed women's stories. Her net worth rose to more than $250 million, making her not only a star but a powerhouse in the industry. Yet with triumph came tragedy. In 2014, Nicole lost her father, Anthony Kidman, a devastating blow. A decade later, in 2023, her mother passed away. For Nicole, who had always leaned on her parents for guidance, these losses left an emptiness no award could fill. Keith, once the man lost in arenas full of strangers, became her anchor. He stood by her side at funerals, comforted her through grief, and reminded her she wasn't alone. Together, they faced natural disasters as well. In 2020, when wildfires swept across Australia, flames reached the edge of their property. Nicole wept, not just from fear of losing a house, but from the terror of losing the fragile happiness they had built. Keith held her hand as they watched the smoke rise, proof that this time she wasn't carrying her grief alone. Their love wasn't about avoiding storms, it was about surviving them. For Keith, the Grammys and fame meant little compared to quiet mornings in Nashville. For Nicole, success on screen mattered less than the peace of walking hand in hand with him through their garden. Together, they had reached the peak of their careers and endured the deepest losses. But as the years passed, whispers began to grow, whispers that even their bond, as resilient as it seemed, might not last forever. Cracks appear. For nearly 2 decades, Keith and Nicole seemed unshakable. They had survived relapse, built a family, and stood beside each other through grief and triumph. But by 2024, whispers began to circulate. Neighbors noticed Keith wasn't at the Nashville home as often. Friends murmured that Nicole was arriving alone at events, her smile as radiant as ever, but her eyes betraying a quiet sadness. These weren't the explosive scandals that tabloids love, no betrayals splashed across headlines, no fiery confrontations caught on camera. Instead, it was silence. The kind of silence that creeps into a marriage slowly, filling the spaces where laughter used to live. Reports suggested Keith had quietly moved out of their family home, the once lively house where piano keys stumbled under little fingers, where Sunday mornings smelled of pancakes, now stood eerily quiet. Lights that once glowed into the night were dimmed before dusk. The warmth that defined their sanctuary seemed to fade. Fans began to speculate when they saw Nicole attending premieres alone, her polished presence masking the weight of absence beside her. Keith, meanwhile, was spotted walking the streets of Nashville, shoulders heavy, expression distant. For a man who had always bared his soul in music, these quiet wanderings told a different story, one of solitude. Social media buzzed with disbelief. "If Keith and Nicole can't make it, what hope is there for the rest of us?" One comment read. For many, their love story wasn't just entertainment, it was hope, the proof that even broken pasts could knit together into something whole. To see cracks appear in that image felt personal, as if the world itself was losing faith in fairy tales. The truth wasn't betrayal or scandal, it was something quieter but just as devastating. The reality that sometimes even the fiercest devotion can run out of breath. And by late 2024, the echo of that truth was impossible to ignore. Divorce confirmed. On September 30, 2025, the love story that had inspired millions for nearly 2 decades officially came to an end. Nicole Kidman filed for divorce from Keith Urban in Davidson County, Tennessee, citing irreconcilable differences. What began with candlelit vows in Sydney in 2006 had now been reduced to the dry language of legal paperwork. According to a breaking report from People, the filing confirmed that Nicole initiated the divorce after 19 years of marriage. The documents revealed no scandal, no accusations, only a straightforward acknowledgement that their union had reached its quiet conclusion. One of the most significant details in the paperwork was custody. People reported that Kidman specifically requested primary custody of their 2 daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. For Nicole, who had endured the heartbreak of estrangement from Isabella and Connor after her divorce from Tom Cruise, this request was deeply symbolic. It wasn't just about legal rights, it was about securing stability and presence for the daughters she still raised at home. When it came to assets, headlines quickly focused on the fortune they had built, estimated at over $325 million combined. But the spotlight wasn't only on numbers, it was on homes that carried memories. Reports highlighted that over the years, the couple invested in properties across Nashville, Sydney, and Manhattan, with outlets like SF Gate specifically noting Nicole's recent purchase of a $3.5 million Nashville mansion following the split. These weren't just houses, they were stages of their shared life, now divided by circumstance. Yet beyond the paperwork and the property roundups, the real loss wasn't financial. It was the end of nearly 2 decades of family dinners, laughter, and resilience. When People confirmed both the divorce filing and Nicole's custody request, fans reacted with heartbreak. "If Keith and Nicole couldn't make it, what hope is there for the rest of us?" one wrote. And so, with a single filing, a love story that once felt unbreakable came to its dignified close. No scandal, no public war of words, just silence, and the acceptance that even the strongest bonds can finally give way. The final word. In the end, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman's marriage wasn't just a Hollywood love story. It was a testament to resilience, to the power of love to heal, even if only for a time. For 19 years, they transformed pain into poetry, grief into laughter, silence into song. They raised children, built a family, and offered the world a rare glimpse of hope that even 2 people scarred by the past could find light together. Their divorce is not the erasure of that hope, but a reminder of something more profound. Love doesn't always last forever, but that doesn't mean it failed. Sometimes love saves us for a season, gives us strength to survive storms, and then gently lets us go. For Keith, who once believed he wasn't enough, marriage to Nicole gave him purpose and redemption. For Nicole, who once felt erased in another relationship, marriage to Keith gave her a place to truly exist, to be seen. Together, they endured wildfires, death, relapse, and relentless scrutiny, and for nearly 2 decades, they chose each other again and again. But time is merciless. Ghosts return.
Grief lingers, and even the strongest devotion can falter under the weight of unspoken pain. And yet, their legacy endures, not as a scandal, not as failure, but as proof that love, even when it breaks, can still leave light behind. Perhaps the most haunting images left behind aren't red carpet smiles, but the quiet ones: a piano gathering dust in the corner, a wedding ring resting on a table, a family portrait turned face down. Symbols of love that once burned so brightly, now echoing in silence. For fans, their story remains unforgettable. For their daughters, it remains proof they were loved fiercely. And for Keith and Nicole themselves, it remains a chapter of survival, devotion, and courage. Because 19 years of love do not vanish. They echo, they endure. They remind us that even in breaking, love can still burn bright enough to light the world. What do you think? Was this the love story of resilience, or proof that even the strongest bonds can break? Let us know in the comments, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next big reveal from Hollywood.